Hey everybody, John Lorden here with another episode of BrainScratch Searchlight for today, August 30th, 2017. Thank you so much for joining me. A young man who lives with his sister tells her he is going to visit a friend and then disappears. The sister later learns that that friend isn't even in town and he had never made plans to meet up with Caleb. What's going on in this case? A lot of twists and turns, I can tell you that. With all that being said, let's take a look at the case of missing person Caleb Diehl. Starting at missingkids.com, here we see the poster that they've generated for him. Missing since March 30th of 2015 from Nocona, Texas. His date of birth is March 15th, 1997. He would now be 20 years old. He went missing. He was only 18 for, it looks like, less than 2 weeks or about 2 weeks. Male, white, blonde hair, blue eyes, 5'11" and weighed 145 pounds. Here we have a few photos of him, but not a whole lot of more information in terms of what happened. Moving over to the NamUs profile, a little bit more of the same. Caleb Diehl, missing since March 30th, 2015. He was 18. He would now be 20. White male. Looks like they've got about the same information in terms of height. Weight, they have it a little bit higher, 165 pounds. For circumstances, nothing. Just that he was last seen March 30th, 2015 in Nocona. Strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes, no known distinctive body features, no tattoos mentioned, nothing like that, no piercings, no scars. Clothing and accessories, we don't even have a clothing description on this case, which always makes things a little bit more tough. Transportation methods, there is a very interesting story about the transportation in this. We're going to get to that. No dental information, no DNA, which I find really tough to believe. No one had a hairbrush or something for him that a DNA sample could be taken. Really unsure about that. And no fingerprint information. So this profile in terms of forensic info, pretty light. We see the same two photos and then a third one that they didn't show on the last poster. I'm not sure which of these photos is more recent. It kind of looks to me like this one that's up is probably the most recent photo. He just looks a little bit older than in the others, but I'm not certain on that. No documents here, but they do have a couple contacts for the investigating agency and thankfully a case number, which I will have in the description box below, as well as contact information so that you can call in your tips. Hopefully, if you have some info, this case really needs some help. Let's move forward to the charlieproject.org. Once again, a great selection of photos that they've pulled together here so you can see Caleb and how he looks in many different forms. Same info, missing from March 30th, 2015, Nocona, Texas. They consider him endangered missing. We're going to get into why. 18 years old. They have his height a bit more of a range, 5'11" to 6'2", 145 pounds. This profile does note that he previously had orthodontic braces, but they were removed in 2013. Diehl was last seen in Nocona, Texas on March 30th, 2015. He lived with his sister in Grapevine, Texas, but at the time of his disappearance, he was visiting his mother in Nocona and had a part-time job there. His own vehicle was in the repair shop, so Diehl borrowed a pickup truck from his employer, Ricky Dale Howard, to go to another job. Howard is also a good friend of Diehl's family. A photo of him is posted below, and I'll show you a photo of him in a bit. So a little bit of an interesting story. Caleb's Twitter account is still active. You can look through it and you will see he was certainly having trouble with his own truck. He couldn't get it to start anymore. There's a picture of him on his Twitter account where he is in the tow truck having his truck towed in to get it worked on. So all this story is checking out. We know that he did borrow the vehicle from Ricky Dale Howard, but there's a very interesting twist that happens with that. Let's continue here. Jumping over to newschannel6now.com. It's been 5 weeks since Caleb Diehl went missing. Diehl is the 18-year-old high school senior, last seen in Nocona, Monday, March 30th. Caleb's mother and sister suspect foul play. Quote, We've been forced to believe that a very trusted family friend has been involved, and we want him to come forward and admit it. We want him to tell us where he is because everything the police has checked out has led back to that as being the strongest possibility, said his mother. Caleb's mother also told News Channel 6 that he did have plans to go to Colorado or California after he graduated. However, she says there's no way that Caleb would have left to go to those places without the things that he valued. What I find a little interesting about this, there is a couple of video segments done by Crime Watch Daily that are very good about this case. They have both of his parents speaking. And his parents noted in there something that just gave me a little bit of a hook in my brain. They said that Caleb was all about finishing school. He knew he had to get his diploma, and that he had to especially be careful because he had missed so many days prior to this point. So I was reading through his Twitter account, and on the 18th of March in 2015, literally only a couple weeks before he goes missing, he says specifically, "I really got to quit skipping school." And then on that same day later, part of me wants to drop out and prove you don't need a sloppy high school diploma to be happy and find something you love doing. Live easy. So it's strange whenever I see something in film and people are being very adamant about their point. He knew that he had to finish school. He might have, but at least from what I'm seeing on his Twitter profile, he was still struggling with that idea about how important was it for him to really get to that diploma. Does that mean that there's some feasibility that he might have left his life behind? I think so. I don't know how high it is, particularly when you review the rest of this information in this case, but I do still think that it is a viable possibility. I know it's always very hard for parents to consider that aspect. No one wants to think that, they meant so little to someone that someone was able to just leave their whole life behind. So I totally get that. But just from the little sprinklings that I'm seeing in this story, it is a possibility. I don't want to completely rule it out at this point, but there's a lot more info to cover on this that points to a different, possibly stronger possibility. So let's keep going here. Jumping over to missingpersonsofamerica.com. Missing teen from Texas, missing for over 4 months. Family fears foul play. Here we get a little more information about the borrowing of this truck. He was in Nocona borrowing a pickup truck belonging to his part-time boss, Ricky Diehl Howard, 53. According to Tammy, Caleb's mom, quote, "He was using it for a day or two while his was in the shop, and he was planning to go back to Grapevine with Courtney that Monday night to go back to school on Tuesday. The only person he supposedly told he was taking it to go on a job was Ricky Howard." Now, what she's talking about is Ricky's story is that Caleb borrowed the truck and told Ricky that he was taking it to a woman that he met in Oklahoma and that she was going to put him to work. What's strange about all this is Monday that this is happening, and we know that he has school on Tuesday. It's mentioned here as well. We already know that he has skipped a whole lot of days and he's worried about it. We know that he is considering the importance of graduating or not. So once again, when you consider this possibility, did he possibly run away? Ricky Howard's story might kind of support an aspect of that. Is it strongly supported? Not really. See, there is a major hiccup in this case. Then an hour and a half after we reported Caleb missing on Wednesday, and I told Ricky they would be contacting him for the license number, the truck shows up minus Caleb. So what happened is, they tell Ricky, authorities going to be contacting you. They need more information on that truck. And Ricky apparently says, "Oh, the truck? Well, yeah, that's in my garage." Now, there are sightings of Caleb using the truck on the day that he borrowed it, though I can't find very strong confirmation of where those sightings come from, but I find multiple notes that he was at least he was seen driving that vehicle around. So how does the vehicle get back to Ricky Howard? There is no real good explanation, but it does wind up back in his garage on his property. There's some interesting things about the truck. First of all, $300 has been zip tied to the steering wheel. What that means, I have no idea. The keys to the garage for a little door that you can open to get into the garage were left in the truck, but according to Ricky Howard, those keys were usually kept right above the door that they open on the windowsill. Now, outside of all that, Caleb probably wouldn't have needed those keys. He had a key of his own to this area because he was an employee of Ricky Howard's, but that key was apparently left back at his home and was found at his home. So who else would be able, I suppose that if you took the key in, if you knew that it was up on the windowsill and you went in, you took the vehicle in, you then locked it up and left through that door. I don't know if it was a hard latch or if it was the kind like a normal door where you could lock it from the inside and close it behind you. But it is a really big question about why the key is not quite in its normal place. But the $300 just has me baffled. I'm wondering, is that a sign from someone? If it was something like, let's say that Ricky had contracted someone to hurt Caleb and to get rid of him, wouldn't Ricky be paying that person at that point? The money's going in the wrong direction. It seems like it's some type of indicator, maybe a message back to Ricky that maybe the job has been done or something. I don't know. But if someone was going to transport money in Ricky's vehicle for Ricky to find it later, like, hey, I'm going to leave $500 in your car, wouldn't you leave it like in the glove compartment or in an envelope under the seat or something else a little more creative rather than strapping it to the steering wheel? That's another thing that occurred to me when I was thinking about all this. Obviously, that money was put there knowing that this vehicle was not going to be parked in a public area because people walking by would be able to look in and say, hey, there's $300 on that steering wheel, and that might entice someone to actually break into the vehicle. So what is the purpose of that money being there in that particular place, and how the heck did that vehicle get back to Ricky are the major, major questions in this case, and we still don't have solid answers to all of that. If you're wondering what Ricky Howard looks like, here is a photo of him. And if it looks like he's in a lineup, you are correct, or a booking photo. He has a bit of a checkered past. We're going to get into that as well. Now, Ricky actually let the investigators search his home, and that's when some issues popped up. They found a bunch of firearms, which normally wouldn't be a big deal, but he has a previous conviction. He's not supposed to have firearms, so that is now turning into criminal charges, and then there are other charges that the investigator is digging up as well. Let's jump over to texomashomepage.com for more information. Family members of a Nocona man who's been missing for almost a year say they're ready for justice to be served. Montague County authorities say while Nocona Police Chief Kent Holcomb was investigating the disappearance of 18-year-old Caleb Diehl, Holcomb passed on additional alleged offenses involving a 13-year-old. 54-year-old Ricky Dale Howard is charged with 2 counts of aggravated sexual assault of a child. He was arrested a few weeks ago in Munster, and then he was released on bond of those charges. And there is more. That was in December of 2015. Now, in January of 2016, Ricky Howard arrested on new sex assault charges. He was arrested Tuesday on 2 new complaints of aggravated sexual assault involving a different victim. So now, jumping forward to June 29th, 2016, we start feeling the repercussions of these charges that are coming his way. Ricky Dale Howard, 54, of Nocona, was sentenced to 5 years in prison Wednesday after entering guilty pleas to 3 counts of unlawfully possessing a firearm the day his trial was scheduled to begin. Actually, that's not even quite correct. There was 3 charges, but each of those charges had multiple counts. If we jump over to TexasTribune.org, they have this cool little page where you can look up the criminal history on someone, and we can see here that possession of a firearm, if you count them, there's actually 11 charges. He was given a term of 5 years, but the sentence began on the same day for all of them. So basically, serving that 5 years is going to be done concurrently. As a convicted felon, he could not legally own a firearm. Howard was sentenced to 46 months in federal prison in April of 2007 on charges of bank fraud and aiding and abetting while he was president of Legend Bank in Nocona. Just sounds like a guy that is not a good person to associate with. Howard was arrested on December 15th, 2015, after 2 complaints of aggravated sexual assault of a child were filed. He is accused of incidents that occurred from 1996 to 2000 and began when the male victim was 13 years old. On January 12th, he was arrested a second time on 2 more complaints of aggravated sexual assault of a child. Those allegations go back to the summer of 1994 when the male victim was 12 years old. Neither of those cases are expected to go to trial this year, according to the district attorney. And from what I've seen, I haven't seen any updates on those cases all the way through now. So I don't know if they're sitting on that until they get close to the end of his current prison term or what's going to be the trigger for them to process those cases. But I don't think those cases are just going to go away. I saw a few mentions to an article. I could not find the source article, but someone basically captured the most important points here on WebSleuths. Thank you, Steelman. So I want to go over these points with you guys really quickly. Officials with the Center for Missing and Exploited Children came in 2 weeks after Caleb went missing with rescue dogs, searching 4 days at various locations Diehl was known to work and frequent. Nocona Police Chief Kent Holcomb reported a crushed cell phone was found near the returned truck. But since it was thrown into the trash, it is unclear if it was Diehl's, whose phone has not been used since March 30th. That is a major piece. Who threw the phone away? I think we have to assume it was probably Ricky, but I can't find information directly to state that. Looking through Caleb's Twitter account, he was still using that on the day he went missing. On the morning that he went missing, there are a couple of retweets by him. So I'd be very curious to know about this phone, more information about it. Hughes said investigators spoke to Howard several times during the course of the Diehl investigation because it is believed he is one of the last people to have contact with the young man before he disappeared. Caleb worked for Howard and had access to all of Howard's property. So knowing the charges that Ricky Howard is facing, I think we have to consider and ask the question, was Caleb possibly another victim of some type of sexual assault by Ricky Howard? I don't know that there's any information that we could look at to try to determine that answer. It was alluded to in the footage that I saw of his parents where they were looking through old photos. I mean, keep in mind, Ricky Howard was around their family as these kids were growing up. These 2 families went on vacation with each other. He probably had some opportunity to have conducted himself in an inappropriate way with Caleb. Was there something coming up in terms, Caleb had just turned 18. Was there some threat that he was going to expose Ricky for what he had done or something along those lines? It's kind of hard to really justify that when you have him going and borrowing Ricky's truck so that he could get around. It doesn't seem like there is any contention that's going on between those two if you're going to let someone borrow your vehicle like that. And he works for the guy, at least in a part-time capacity. So it just seems like a strange place for their relationship to have gone if that is really what's going on here. There's another possibility in that did Ricky help Caleb flee from his life and send him to go reset himself somewhere else in the country? Like I said, I've talked to you guys about why. I think that possibility needs to be looked into more, if nothing else, just to close it out so we could bring the focus back to where it should be. But it does need to be considered. He was certainly talking in a way on Twitter, at least in particular, that would make me question that. The other thing that I really haven't dived into here is on his Twitter account, I also noticed a few drug references. It seems to me he was at a minimum a user of marijuana. I know a lot of kids get into that. I don't think that is necessarily such a strange thing, but with that comes contact with other people that might be a bit not quite trustworthy, let's just say. There was also a few references in his Twitter account to Xanax, but those seem to be more in kind of a joking vein. The marijuana references were pretty direct. One of them, he showed a picture of himself, and it was as if he had just gotten high. Another one, he talked about if someone would bring him food, that he would smoke them out. So I'm fairly confident he was at least using marijuana. The question then becomes, where is he getting it? Is this maybe another side business of Ricky Howard's? Was he a runner for him? Does that justify how this money wound up in the truck? Is there something to do with some type of drug deal around this case? I kind of have a feeling there might be some aspect to that. And here's another aspect that I don't hear people really consider in this case. What if Ricky Howard did not have anything directly to do with harming Caleb, but what if he had put him in a situation where he could have been harmed? For example, if he was a runner for some type of illegal activity. It seems like the media and the family is very focused on Ricky in terms of thinking that he is the actual culprit that harmed Caleb or did something to Caleb. It could be that Ricky is just a party to bringing Caleb into an environment where he was harmed by something else. And I think that's something, just another consideration that needs to be made here. Remember, Ricky let these guys come and search his property. If nothing else, if he did do something to Caleb, he was at least confident they weren't going to find anything specifically on his property. So if he was part of this, he did it to Caleb somewhere else. How would that have happened if Caleb was driving around in his truck on his own? I don't know. I wish we had more information about those sightings of Caleb. Was he really alone? Was Ricky possibly with him in the passenger seat? We really don't know. And what about this story that Ricky gave of this woman in Oklahoma offering Caleb a job? Could it be that Caleb upped and left and got to Oklahoma and is working with someone, saving up enough money so he can move to Colorado or California? I think it's all stuff that we have to consider. It's really tough. On the family's Facebook page, they're even asking for help. They're like, we just need someone that is willing to really investigate this case. And it's tough because the information that is out there is so pointed so strongly at Ricky. And of course it is. There's a very big question in how that vehicle got back into Ricky's garage that we don't have a reasonable explanation for. There are a couple of updates, but there was nothing very interesting. Back over at Texoma's homepage, they noted the 2-year anniversary since Caleb went missing, but really just kind of repeated the basics of the story. Over at News Channel 6, they did the same thing. They're just noting that there are still no answers. And then they're kind of just going over the high points of the story. There is a Facebook page, Bring Caleb Diehl Home. This one post in particular from August 23rd, 2016, talks about that they were contacted by Dr. Phil, by some producers of Dr. Phil. They wanted to get them and Ricky in the same room and have this kind of confrontational moment. The family did not feel very good about what the producers were asking for. I totally understand that. And then, of course, this is where they make the statement that they're hoping to find someone that has a desire to really investigate this case. And I have to agree with them. I mean, this community that we're talking about is only about 3,000 people. Someone in that community knows something. But what I'm concerned about is if that person is involved in some other type of illegal activity, or if there was illegal activity that was part of what happened to Caleb, they might not want to come forward, especially after seeing how Ricky has been treated throughout this investigation. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. Obviously, if the dude is facing these charges with a 13 and a 12-year-old, he definitely deserves it. But if you have someone that is possibly, let's say, a drug runner that worked for Ricky, is he really going to step forward when there is some potential that he might get charged as well for his involvement in what happened to Caleb? I don't know. I really don't know. And like I mentioned, there's at least some level of drug activity going on in Caleb's life. I don't know who facilitated that. I don't know where he was buying from, essentially. There's this whole other social circle. And when you consider that the story his family was told was just a blatant lie, you know, hey, I'm going to visit this friend. And by the way, they find out that friend isn't even in town during this. You know, people that use drugs will sometimes do this because they want to protect their family. They don't want their family to know about what they're doing. Was Caleb going to meet up with someone to score something possibly? There are a ton of considerations in this case, and I see what the family is talking about. I hope the family might consider actually hiring a private investigator, because I do think that there are enough questions that need to be answered in this case. Are we going to get an answer from Ricky in terms of the truck and how that got back into his garage? I don't think so. I think there's some criminal element at play there, but it might not necessarily be that Caleb was murdered in that truck or something along those lines. It might not be that drastic. It might be something else that is stopping him from speaking about how that vehicle got back to him with $300 zip tied on the driver's steering wheel. This is where I turn it over to you, Brain Scratchers. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But more important than that, please share this case. Let's raise exposure to it. It's been over 2 years. You know how these things go. A lot of media gets into it while it's hot and fresh. They start backing off of it. And we want to raise exposure. We want to show Caleb's face. We want more people to be aware that this young man is missing. His family is missing him. He has 4 siblings that are wondering where he is. He has 2 parents probably agonizing over this every single day and night. So if there's something we can do to help him, let's do that. Share this video, particularly with your friends in Texas, in Oklahoma, and straight from his mom's mouth, he was talking about possibly going to Colorado or California. So on top of that, check out the link down below for the Crime Watch Daily episode. There's 2 videos that are embedded in the actual story there. Check both of those out so you can get a little more detail about this case. I've covered most of the main points, but that way you'll also be able to see it straight from his family's, not just their mouths, but from their hearts, how they're feeling about this. And of course, thank you all for being out there to help me spread the word on cases like this. I really, really appreciate you guys. Before I go, I did want to mention one more thing. You know how frequently we talk about WebSleuths on this channel? Apparently, they are having a bit of an adpocalypse of their own, and they are struggling a bit right now. I think that it's only fair to mention that, and I will have a link in the description box below to a GoFundMe where they are trying to raise some funds. And on behalf of all you amazing Patreon supporters of the Lord and Arch channel, we are also going to be donating to WebSleuths and helping to keep them afloat through this trying time. They're really important, guys. You guys know how often I talk about their work here. Outside of that, it's a community of thousands of people just like you that care about these cases, that want to talk about these cases, and they've made some really good, some good breaks in these cases. It's too important to have this service become limited in any way. So if you will also join me in supporting them, I really appreciate it. And once again, thank you to my awesome Patreon supporters. Take care, everyone. I'll see you back here tomorrow with more on the Lord and Arch channel.